Hey guys, it's Crazy Tom, and I'm indoors here at home because it's pouring rain outside. Go figure. But I'm here for another edition of Crazy Tom's What Drives Me Crazy for this Friday, July 24th. And in a way, this is more like an issue rather than a season, but there's a reason why I decided to make baseball my topic for today's edition. And I know I haven't done a What Drives Me Crazy in a while, but I need to let people know on a whole bunch of things. First of all, there should not be any sports going on right now. Yes, it's a nice escape. What NASCAR has done over the last 2 months really set the tone for everybody else. And they've done it in a way which I thought, well, for the most part, and I say for the most part because Talladega I'm still not very sure of, but for the most part, they did very well. But now trying to start one of the big four, baseball, up, especially when technically more than half the season is over and now having it be a 60-game sprint to the finish line, I just really wonder about this. And I really do believe the owners have a lot to do with it, and especially with everything going on with COVID-19. The owners did not want to play into November because they believe that's when the next big spike will happen everywhere, not just the 30 states that are having trouble right now with everybody closing, having to have mask restrictions and all that stuff, but that subject's for another time. As far as baseball went, the season began last night, and what a surprise! The Yankees beat the Nationals 4-1 in a rain-shortened six-inning game. Now, of course, the Nationals, winners of the World Series last year, they host the Yankees, and the game was over before the Nationals came to bat in the bottom of the first, thanks to a Mike Stanton's two-run home run. I refuse to call him Giancarlo, by the way. I call him Mike Stanton. And to me, I think baseball is deliberately sabotaging, in some way, 28 other teams to get the narrative that they want. Think about it. Who was the difference maker in the 2019 World Series? Well, one of them, Juan Soto. What do you know? Hours before game time, poof, he was tested positive for COVID-19. We don't know if that's the truth, but any conspiracy theorist, and I hate the word conspiracy, but any Yankee hater or conspiracy theorist could figure out, oh, they had to take out Soto so that the Yankees could win the first game. Well, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And in that first game, to me, I was just absolutely appalled of what I saw. Both teams, for the season opener, with no fans in the stands, decided to take a knee as they recognize the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, you know I have a lot of opinions on that, but the only thing I will say is, if you're going to support a cause that is going to be for the better humanity, that cause better stand what it means. And I just have a very bad feeling that cause, that movement doesn't stand for what it's supposed to mean. If you're going to get equality, that goes for all levels of life. It doesn't matter if you're powerful or privileged, anything like that. Everyone has to be an equal playing field. That's why in the Declaration of Independence it always said that all men and women in this case are created equal. Doesn't matter the gender, doesn't matter your political affiliation, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter how much money you have. Everybody's equal. And until that happens, there will never be any equality in this country or on this planet. That's why I was absolutely appalled about what happened. And by the way, Dr. Fauci threw the ceremonial first pitch, and he threw a bad pitch. I said, he threw a COVID ball. What a surprise. But anyway, I want to also give you the rundown as to what I think is going to happen in 2020. But I also want to explain some of the rule changes that are going on. I definitely have MLB.com up to assist me here. First of all, the way the schedule is, it's 60 games. 40 games, 10 against each member of your division. And then you're going to have 20 interleague games against teams from basically your same division. So like the NL East plays the AL East, Central versus Central, West versus West. Very simple. So you'll get a Subway Series, you'll get a Chi-Town Series, you'll get a Freeway Series, and you'll definitely get Baltimore playing Washington, And you'll definitely get Miami playing Tampa, but like anyone's going to really care about those games. So they're already putting out the 2021 schedule in some bits and pieces already. And I'm like, we haven't even played 2020 yet. But that's where television stepped in. The owners and the networks basically put the schedule together to make sure that all the major cities, New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, get recognized as much as possible. Why do you think that Fox, since 1996, have accumulated a formula which involved a New York team, a Chicago team, and a Los Angeles team? So you know the Yankees or Mets will be on, the Cubs or White Sox will be on, and the Angels or Dodgers will be on. Look at Saturday's slate. The 1 o'clock game, Brewers at Cubs. The 4 o'clock game, Giants at Dodgers. The 7 o'clock game, Yankees at Nationals. Boom, all three major markets taken care of at the same time. Fox has done that for years, and ESPN easily follows suit, making basically Subway Series or Yankees Red Sox mandatory by federal law. It's all because of money. It's not because of how well you play. That's all there is to it. And I think what we saw yesterday, a lot of bad things. The pregame, for one. The fact that Stanton's two-run homer in the top of the first inning, basically, that was the game. And by the way, the game only went 6 innings. So if there's a rain delay, you don't have any fans to worry about. They'll call the game. So it's going to feel a lot more like spring training, but in an extended way. If it rains, remember, umpires only have to wait like half an hour. If it doesn't get out of there, guess what? We're not going back out there unless it's an extremely important game. So that's why I was so annoyed as to what took place last night to start the season. Yes, we've all missed baseball, but America's pastime has become America's afterthought, and you can thank Bud Selig for ruining the game over 25 years ago, who started that acclaim. And the only reason why the 94 strike happened was because they didn't want a small market team like the Blue Jays winning another World Series like they did the previous two in 92 and 93. The whole reason why COVID, I believe, shut down sports, look who won over the last year. In basketball, it was the Toronto Raptors. Anytime Toronto wins a major championship, something shuts the sport down, or society down for that matter. In hockey, the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup for the very first time. And remember, hockey begins again on August 1st with those play-in games before the playoffs actually happen. For baseball, the Washington Nationals won the World Series. All the road teams won in the World Series for the first time ever in any sport. And the Nationals winning the World Series caused a national catastrophe for investors and those people trying to market and make money for baseball and the networks. And finally, the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl early February, their first title in 50 years. Do you see why what's happening right now is no coincidence? Do you see why all the sports are kind of losing money because smaller markets are winning championships? I said this many, many times. If a small market wins, it doesn't benefit the sport. And that's why we are seeing crazy things happen around us that may be completely unrelated to sports, but in a deeper way are related to sports. Now let me share with you the rule changes that's coming up for this year, for everybody. Now, of course, my Phillies are playing tonight, weather permitting. Of course, I'm inside doing this show because it is pouring rain outside. Now, for the first time ever, the National League is going to use a universal designated hitter as the American League has used since the early 1970s. Now, it's unfortunate that this is happening because the American and National League have always had different ways of approaching things. And for now, everybody using a designated hitter takes away that special difference between the two leagues. Hopefully, this is only a one-year experiment. While the American League adopted the designated hitter rule in 1973, pitchers have continued to hit in games played in National League ballparks. But as mentioned, it won't happen this year. Both leagues will use the designated hitter to avoid overtaxing pitchers by having them hit. It's part of the game. Are you telling me that if somebody made $35 million a year in the National League, they want to keep the designated hitter so you don't overtax them? Man, everyone's a financial liability here. Or are they just a character in baseball's eye candy scheme that we're all watching? Now, here's another rule that I cannot stand. I call this what's called the intentional walk and balk rule. In other words, if a game goes to extra innings, a runner will begin on second base to start the top and bottom of 10th innings onward. During the regular season, every half inning after the ninth will begin with a runner on second base. If that runner scores, the pitcher will not be charged with an earned run. Now, mind you, I'm turning my head so I can read off the website. The runner placed on second at the start of each half inning will be the player in the batting order immediately preceding that half inning's leadoff hitter or a pinch runner. However, if the player in the batting order immediately preceding that half inning's leadoff hitter is the pitcher, the runner placed on second base may be the player preceding the pitcher in the batting order. But if the pitcher's not hitting, why are we mentioning a pitcher here? But if the pitcher's being used as a pinch runner, maybe that's probably what they're using. Now, I absolutely cannot stand that rule because it takes away the special qualities that baseball has. But baseball's been talking about having a clock for years and shortening the game. Well, with no fans in the stands, well, you don't throw the ball around anymore to players in between batters. That saves some time. So now you can have a lot of games under 3 hours, but everyone making millions and tens of millions of dollars per season, whether it be prorated or not. Guess what? Now you're saving them. You are saving them because they have to do less work for more money. They're robbers. They're absolute robbers. Now here's the good news. With that intentional walk and balk rule, it is basically parallel to the NHL having the shootout rule. Now, when the NHL has their play-in rounds leading into the traditional NHL playoffs, which I still can't believe hockey's still playing. I mean, they start the season in October. I don't even know how they're going to have an off-season, if they're going to have any off-season. But think about it. During the play-in games, it'll be treated like regular season games where they'll go to a 5-minute overtime, and if there's no winner, they'll go to that ridiculous shootout. Thankfully, in the playoffs, there are no shootouts, and they play overtime, basically 20-minute periods until somebody scores. In baseball, thankfully, they're paralleling what the NHL is doing. Because of the intentional walk and balk rule, where they're starting a runner on second base to start each half inning from the 10th inning onward, that to me takes away from the special qualities of the game. But they're also saving the players because this is basically a 60-game sprint, which is probably why they're doing that in the first place. But I don't think that experiment is going to work. The good news is, in the postseason, it will be back to traditional baseball, and there will be no intentional walk and balk rule. So it'll be traditional baseball from the 10th inning onward in the postseason. So the runner on second to start extra innings is only for the regular season, not for the playoffs. That, I can say, is somewhat good news. But when they go to a real season in 2021, they need to dump the rule altogether. Now, what about position players pitching? Well, there will be no restrictions on position players pitching in 2020. A rule change installed at the end of the 2019 season would have required teams to designate every player on the active roster as either a pitcher or a position player, and position players would have been unable to pitch unless it was extra innings, their team was ahead or trailing by more than 6 runs, or they had qualified for the two-way designation. That rule will not apply for 2020. Thank goodness. Now, as far as suspended games go, if, say, for example, you have a game between the Phillies and Nats and we have a big storm, and the game is tied at 3 in like the top of the 7th inning, if weather forces a game to be cut short before it becomes official, it will be continued at a later date rather than starting from scratch. So basically, I kind of thought of this wrong before actually reading it. Say the Phillies and Nats are tied at 3-3, it's the top of the fourth inning. Big storm happens, the game doesn't continue. What'll happen is that the game will resume from that point and not start from scratch. So basically, everything is a suspended game if you start playing. Of course, there was one situation, I think, between Kansas City and Baltimore, where Kansas City was one strike away from finishing Baltimore off in an official game, but then a huge storm hits, 2 foul balls were hit, then you can't even see the field with the rain pouring down. The umpires called time. Rain delay happens, they never come back out. Game got postponed because of rain, all the stats didn't count, and both teams had to come back for a doubleheader. But that was many years ago. Baseball is not allowing that. So if a game starts and then gets delayed and they can't continue that day, the game will resume at a later date from the point it left off. We don't start over. That's what they're meaning. Now, when it comes to unsportsmanlike conduct, yes, replay and the video cameras have cut down on a lot of manager arguments, which really has taken away from the excitement of the game. Players and managers will be expected to maintain physical distance from all umpires and opposing players on the playing field whenever possible. Players or managers who leave their position to argue with umpires, come within 6 feet of an umpire or opposing player or manager for the purpose of an argument, or engage in an altercation on the field will automatically be ejected and subsequently disciplined, which includes a fine and a suspension. Discipline will be consistent with past precedent and shall not be reduced or prorated based on the length of the season. So you're not going to see those chin-to-chin arguments because of COVID-19. So they put those safety regulations in place. So we're not going to really be seeing exciting baseball. And oh, by the way, cutouts, give me a look. God doggone break. What a waste. You want real people in the stands, not cardboard. And what happens if the cardboard gets damaged during a rain delay? Think about it, you knuckleheads. Now here's something people might not know when it comes to pitchers this year. Pitchers will be permitted to carry a small wet rag in their back pocket to be used for moisture in exchange for licking their fingers. Pitchers will not be able to access the rag while on the rubber, and they must clearly wipe the fingers of their pitching hand dry before touching the ball or the rubber. Water is the only substance that will be allowed on the rag, which makes sense because pine tar does not work at all, and it is just unbelievable how a lot of people have tried getting away with like scuffing balls and stuff like that. And you know, whenever something happens, you'll always say, blame Houston, blame Boston. But then all the Yankee conspiracy theorists will say, blame the Yankees. But then again, hey, everyone cheats just as equal. It's just that money covers up everything, like we have seen since Bud Selig has been the commissioner. Now, my predictions very quickly for the 2020 season. I think it's just going to be a snooze fest as far as I'm concerned. I think the National League Division winners will be Atlanta, Milwaukee, and Los Angeles. The American League Division winners will be the Yankees, the Twins, and in a surprise, the Oakland A's. Now, I don't know if baseball's going to be doing something like this. And I thought that what the NBA does, like remember, they have 30 teams just like baseball has 30 teams. Whenever they have division winners, there are also teams that sometimes they can be having a better record and not be a division winner. Like say, for instance, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have a record of like 53-29, but the Los Angeles Lakers have a 51-31 record and they win the Pacific Division. Well, no division winner in basketball can be seated lower than fourth. So what would happen is the wild card team, the team that's not the division winner, they would get upward into that echelon and they would be seated like second or third, but no division winner would be lower than getting a fourth seed, and then you get the other 4 teams after that. Baseball is a little bit different. This year in the 60-game stretch, they're going to be doing something pretty much parallel to what the NFL did in 1982. Now, for those of you who weren't around then, in 1982, the year after the 49ers won the Super Bowl, at our expense, of course, thank you, Dwight Clark, the NFL played 2 games and then went on strike for, I believe, 7 or 8 weeks. They ended up playing the final 7 weeks of the season and ended up having a 9-game schedule. Because of the strike, the NFL, for that year only, expanded the playoff teams to 16 out of the 28 that they had. That, of course, was the year that the Washington Redskins, and I will always call them the Redskins, not the Washington football team, because I am not part of that cancel culture garbage. The Redskins won their first of 3 Super Bowls in a 10-year stretch that year. But the NFL expanded their playoff team count to 16 because of the 7-week strike. Baseball is going to do the same thing. Now, it's going to be 8 American League, 8 National League teams. How is this going to break down? Well, it's going to be 8 teams per league. What will happen is this. The 3 division winners obviously are going to get in. But the non-division winners, of course, having the 2 wild cards in previous years, it's going to be done differently. The teams that finish second place in each division also get in. So basically, if you finish second place, you've clinched the spot. And then you have 2 wild card teams, the 2 best records out of the remaining 9 teams. They get in as 7 and 8. I think that's a little bit crazy. As we know, since 2012, you have a wild card round, you have a divisional round, you have a championship round, and you have the World Series. But instead of the 1-game wild card playoff, which that Milwaukee player basically carte blanched the Nationals the World Series last year, what'll happen is this, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's a way for baseball to save money. In the wild card round, if you're the higher seeded team, you play a 3-game series and all of your games will be at home. I was hoping for a road game and 2 home games, but that's not the case. They want to save for travel. But like, it would really make a difference. It's basically money laundering if you think about it. So 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. The wild card series will be a 3-game series at the higher seeded team's park. So if the Indians are the 8 seed and the Yankees are the 1 seed, all 3 games will be played in New York. That's almost given. But the divisional series will still be a best of 5. Now, instead of having a reseed, what they'll do is 1 versus 8 plays 4 versus 5, and the winner of 2 versus 7 plays 3 versus 6. Those winners of those 4 wild card series. I don't like that idea for this reason, because what the NHL does, what the NHL did in the past before they changed their format, was they reseeded after the first round. The NBA does the same thing. Why wouldn't baseball do that? So if the teams that come out of there are basically 1, 5, 6, 7, then you would have 1 versus 7 and 5 versus 6 in the division series. But of course, they're not going to think along those lines. It's a little bit weird, isn't it? That's why I feel if you're going to have an advantage, you should reseed, and baseball's not doing that. Then following that, the League Championship Series 2-3-2 and the World Series 2-3-2. And home field for the World Series, as it has been the last couple of years, that will be at the advantage of the team who has the better record going into the World Series. So again, for the playoffs, 3 division winners, 3 second place teams, and 2 wild card teams out of the rest of the bunch. I don't necessarily agree with that, because the division winners, they deserve it. But if you're in a tough division like the National League East, you could have a team that's in 4th place and have a better record than one division second place team and not get into playoffs. I don't like that. That's why I feel it should be the 3 division winners and the 5 best records that follow. It will probably come down to that, but if it doesn't, then we'll know that experiment was an absolute failure. Oh, and so So basically, what they describe, the division winners, and then the next three seeds will be the teams that play in second, which I don't like. And then the final two will go with the next best records, regardless of division and its standing. So the 7 and 8 seeds will be considered the wild card teams because the top two teams in each division make the playoffs. So every team now has to fight to get to that division series. You are not sitting out and waiting for the wild card game to determine your opponent anymore. Now, if you're wondering, this format is only in effect for this year because it is a 60-game schedule. With all things related to COVID-19, there's always a chance of scheduling and other changes next year. But any temporary or permanent changes to postseason structure has to be put under the collective bargaining agreement, which expires after next year, 2021. And in case you're wondering, the best of three wildcard series will run Tuesday, September 29th through Friday, October 2nd. ESPN will televise 7 of the 8 series, and TBS will carry the other one. So that's basically all there is to it. But given how this season has started, I can tell you right now, I'm going to make this point blank because I made this prediction last year, but then Houston ruined it for the investors and Washington ruined it because the Phillies were idiots. Remember, the Phillies were idiots because of an idiot manager. Don't be surprised that the Phillies miss the playoffs and the San Francisco Giants make the playoffs. Yeah, you heard it. Philly is always about failure in regards to winning. Of course, there can be some accidental exceptions, but Gabe Kapler, watch. Everyone laughed at him as Phillies manager because he was an idiot. Watch him excel in San Francisco. I think the Giants somehow get into the playoffs and the Phillies do not. That's the way sports in Philadelphia works. But my World Series this year, just like I predicted last year, what should have happened didn't. For the investors, for marketing, for baseball, for everybody involved, the eye candy mandate was supposed to be the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series. That didn't happen. Based upon what started this last night in D.C., I think I can be very confident to say baseball will do everything in its power to have a Yankees-Dodgers World Series in 2020. It's about money. It's all about major markets. It's about making up for all the lost money from this year. All wars, all decisions, corporate or otherwise, are always financial in nature, and sports scores are no exception. That's why it will be Yankees and Dodgers to make up for lost money from the pandemic market. Those are my thoughts on the 2020 season, and that, my friends, still is what drives me crazy. Why we're even playing? I don't even know. If it really is about our safety, we wouldn't be doing this right now. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Crazy Tom Show, and of course, you can check out my What Drives Me Crazy page on Facebook, so make sure you keep an eye on that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please enjoy your weekend, enjoy baseball, and go back to cartoons if you're against a lot of this stuff. Be well, guys. Talk to you soon, and I guess play ball. Just make sure you fumigate the balls and make sure there are no germs on it before you throw it.